And you are right. So, welcome everybody to a very hot Saturday afternoon. As the title of the video or live stream would depict, I have Corlenscope with me, the very talented and created master of, let's get this right, of this little guy that I bought, and obviously many other creations that he's come up with, designed, and everything else. Would you like to just do a little bit about yourself? A little bit about yourself first, shall we?
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's really cool. So basically, where do I start? Well, I can explain to you what kind of started all of this. How can I say, interest in these sort of creations and things like that. And
Yep.
where it basically started was as a young kid. We used to have these little like corner shops, pretty much like what you have in the UK. But
Okay.
these guys used to stock everything. I mean, they even would have like little arcade machines in the shop, and like one or two arcade machines, a pinball machine. And so often I would go with my dad. He would like go there to buy cigarettes or something, and then we'd hang out at the shop for a while. And they always had this rack of comic books, right?
Okay.
Funny enough, they never really stocked sort of mainstream comics like Marvel and stuff. They mainly stocked weird things like. So I brought some visual aids.
Cool.
They used to stock like these horror comics, and I mean, as a kid, I thought this was like the best things I've ever seen in my life. And so often I would, before we left the shop, I would most probably leave with like one or two copies of these random comics. And I mean, obviously, it wasn't like they were running in series, or it was just whatever you could find on the shelf. If it looked great, I would ask, oh, can I have this one? And they'd say, yeah, okay, fine, because they were really cheap as well. And I think that's what sparked my interest in the sort of this kooky. I describe it as like kooky horror. It's horror, but it's not like extreme gore or anything. It's more just like monsters and creatures, and I love that type of stuff. And I think thinking about it now, I definitely think that those comics and stuff is what sort of started the small spark that then ignited the fire. As I got older, I was just like, oh man, this stuff is great. And it's quite interesting because as you get older, you sort of forget about these things. You move on, there's new influences and stuff like that. And then at some other point, I always find myself like circling back to these things again. It's like I can never really get rid of it. Not that I want to get rid of it. I mean, I just
No.
absolutely love it. But yeah, it's always been with me in some shape, way, or form. I remember, I studied graphic design in university, and my one graphics teacher said to me like, "Oh no, you should definitely go into illustration. Like graphic design, you're good at graphic design, but illustrations, where your strengths really lie."
Yeah.
And at that stage, the only reason why I was studying graphic design was that it was like the only thing that looked to me like, oh, you can make a living from graphic design. But I don't think, with illustration, I could make a living. So that's why I studied graphic design. But on the side, I was always like drawing, painting, sculpting, doing stuff like that on the side. Not ever thinking that I would take it anywhere further. It was just more for myself, because I was just like, if I just had to do graphic design, I think that it would have like driven me nuts. You can only do so many clients' logos, and then you just want to
Yeah.
jump off a cliff. So and so yeah, so then slowly I was doing I was doing graphic design for a bit. I started working for a magazine company. That it was a children's magazine company, and I was doing the illustrations and things in the magazine, and then doing layouts and stuff like that. And I think that's also what contributed a lot to my sort of artistic thinking when it came to like when I'm designing the header cards and things for my toys and stuff like that. Yeah, there we go. Then I also it's not just about the illustration, but it's like, how do I lay that thing out? How does it read nicely?
Mhm.
All these things like sort of go. Start thinking about these things, and like, yeah, I've got so many things to consider. And then the same with like when I do my posters and stuff like that as well. There's one of them there, that one. When I'm doing those layouts and things, it's like 50%, drawing and coloring and creating the artwork, but then it's another 50% just like getting everything to balance and so forth. So I even though, like I said in the beginning, that graphic design is what I studied originally, it's helped along the way, but it's not something I would have pursued as a full-time career. I think illustration was always the thing that I was going to end up doing, which now I do for a living.
Well, I say you're very talented. I say you seem to be doing very well. So it's obviously the right path for you, and it's good you obviously enjoy it and have a passion for it. So that I think is always helpful to see.
Yeah.
Cool. I've got a few questions. You've answered some of them, so that's all right.
All right.
But cool. So what was kind of the first design that you kind of came up with to? I don't know if you were, because I see obviously that you're good at art and you're drawing and stuff. Did you just have a kind of transfer that you go into drawing, and then someone said, "Oh, that'd be good as a toy," or a figure, depending on what you classify it as, and then you decided to look into it? Because I mean, you must do a lot in regards to drawing something, then designing it, and obviously then it has moving parts and magnets and everything else. So there are a lot of elements. I'm just curious to how you kind of came from going, well, I'm good at illustration, and then I like this horror side of things, and then obviously. And then now you're creating little cool characters like this.
Little characters. Well, actually, funny enough, so I've always been, like I said, I've been drawing and stuff, and I keep everything in sketchbooks. And I've got a whole bunch of them. Just as a quick example, it's just a random one, but I've got everything like in these sketchbooks, right? And let's just see. So it's always filled with all types of random illustrations. And what happens often is I find myself like just looking through my older sketchbooks, and one day I was paging through one of the sketchbooks, and I'd drawn this like Martian sort of character, and I was looking, I was thinking, that could make an interesting toy, right? It just like nobody really said to me, oh, you should look into art toys, but I knew about the art toy scene because the art toy scene had started. There was guys out there that was doing some amazing stuff, and I didn't think like, oh, but because I was looking at the Sofubi side of things, and they had a very particular look and the way that they're manufactured. And I was like, oh, that's way out of my wheelhouse. I can't afford to like make one master toy and then it goes to Japan and gets made into molds and vinyl and all of that. It's just it was way out of my. But I never thought like, but you could use resin. I mean, that's the other option, because I used to do moldings for a guy. He had a framing company. And he used to do a lot of interior theming for pubs. And in South Africa, he got the contract to do the McGinty's pubs, based on the Guinness beer. And basically they had all these props that they brought from Ireland. And it was too expensive to keep bringing the props in. So they just purchased one of each. And then basically I was making silicone molds and then casting them in resin for him. So then anyway, so getting back to my original story, I was I was looking at the sketch of this weird alien thing, and I thought, oh, this could be an interesting toy. And then I started like sculpting this thing, but it took me forever because I'd never sculpted with wax clay before, and I knew, doing some research, I knew that that's what the toy sculptors use. They use wax clay, right? So wax clay I got hold of. And started sculpting this thing, and took me months and months and months. Just working on it on and off. And eventually, I made like the first rough molds and prototypes of this character. I think I managed to cast about 6 of them because the amount of resin that I was pouring into the mold, it was slowly destroying the mold. So I only got really 6 good casts, and then eventually it was just, there was air bubbles and there was just like flashing everywhere, and it was a total disaster. And I was like thinking to myself, man, this is not working for me, because I spent hours and hours sculpting this thing. Then I spent hours and hours cleaning up all these little parts, then glue them back together and fix them. And I was like, no, this doesn't work for me. So I put him aside for a while. And then with the work that I do, because I work in the video games industry, I'm a concept designer by trade. So I started doing a lot of ZBrush, and I started teaching myself how to use ZBrush. And then at the same time, 3D printers were starting to become, affordable, that you can actually have your own personal 3D printer, because back before that they were quite expensive, but then they slowly started getting cheaper and cheaper. And I took a look at that character again. So I always kept one for myself, the original resin one. I kept one, and I was looking at this character and I thought to myself, maybe I should try and sculpt it in ZBrush and 3D print the thing, and then take it from there. So I did that. I sculpted a the ZBrush sculpt and everything, printed him in resin, then made molds. And I only managed to cast a few because even though I had sculpted the whole thing digitally, and obviously the printing comes out as you sculpted it, 3D print comes out exactly the same. With the intricacies of the design, I still had a lot of problems with the mold because I was still in the mindset of, you print a master and then you make molds and you cast them in resin. However, my molds making skills for something as intricate as that wasn't up to scratch yet. So I was getting a lot of issues, trapped air bubbles and things like that, which I think a lot of artists that work with resin can say the same thing. It's a constant battle with resin. Although it is rewarding when it works, but when it doesn't work, it's an absolute battle. But anyways, so I made a new, I made molds for the new one. I casted a few of them, and at that stage we just got the first Comic-Con coming to South Africa from MCM. They brought it to South Africa, and I took the figures there, and they all sold. I was like really stoked. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. But at that stage, they didn't even have articulation, anything. They were literally just like statues, because everything was glued into place. Because I was like, I don't know how to make these things articulate. And then I revisited the figure again for a third time, and that's when I decided, but I want to do some articulation or something to this figure. And I've only done the prototype, and I'm actually going to revisit him again. But I can show you what he looks like. This is the Void Explorer. So it's magnetics for the arms. The legs don't move; they're static at the moment. So there's the other arm. But yeah, this was the guy that started it all for me. Was this little character? And
so little.
Yeah, he was born from a sketch, and then basically I just looked at him one day and thought, oh, this could be kind of a cool art way, and took it from there. So that's how it started.
Cool. We do have one viewer, Danielle. I'm not going to. But she remembers that alien, so obviously you do have a fan as it joined the chat. Thank you.
Nice.
No, it's cool. Yeah, one thing I was going to say, because obviously when I got mine, as you saw in this video, I was quite surprised that they were magnetic. I don't know if you collect toys outside of this or anything, but one thing I've always found with the old 80s and 90s, the articulation side of things, anything that moves over time does seem to have issues, or they always bits fall apart. Where with yours and magnets, I think that kind of makes that section redundant, or at least should last a lot longer, which I think is a nice thing to have.
Because and funny enough, the reason why I decided to go with magnets, particularly for those coffin heads, was the fact that the tolerances that I had on the little bodies, but that space there, it was too small for a peg or anything like that. And I was thinking to myself, but I want to make the little arms move. How am I going to do it? And that's when the idea of the magnets came into play. And I was like, oh, yeah, magnets could do the job. And I had tried these my earlier versions of these guys. I had used other magnets, but I found that the strength wasn't as strong. And then I discovered a company online that I think they're called Euro Magnets. And I ordered a sample pack of their magnet, and that's when I was like, yeah, this is going to do the job. And I think also the other reason why I kind of gravitated towards magnets, that as a kid I had Master of the Universe figures, and I don't know if you know that they're notorious for eventually their legs just become like floppy. And I was like, but for me it was like, oh my god, why is it doing this? And obviously it's just time and playing with it. As kids, when we play with toys, it wasn't like, we were not like adults now. We were thinking, we've got to kind of look after it. As a kid, you're just like, throw the toy around, and and you just hope for the best. And then eventually you don't understand why he's just he stands in, and the next man just flops down.
No, I can get that.
Yeah.
Cool. Also, another thing I noticed, obviously, besides the coffin head, and I've got to think, I think is it Lord Gornante, which I think, Slimehouse TV. You have a kind of recurring theme. You like to have dual rotating heads. Is there any specific reason why you incorporate that, or is it just to kind of increase the amount of features of that figure or figures?
Yeah, I think you know what it was when I originally did the sketch for the coffin, because again they were also like basically a sketchbook sketch that was just living in my sketchbooks. And one day I was like paging through and I was like, oh, this could be kind of interesting. But when I was looking at it, I was thinking, but it's only got a face in the front, and that was it. And I was thinking to myself, but what if then I was thinking about that character from Masters of the Universe, Manny Faces, that
Yes.
turn his little. I see, oh, how could I do that, to this little coffin creature? And then my original mock-up was literally just I made a little coffin body out of cardboard, stuck a piece of plastic in the front where the face would be, and just drew like a happy face on the one side and a sad face on the other side. And like kind of was working out the mechanics of how these things would like turn and how I would put them together. And that's pretty much like the reason why I did it was just I wanted something that was a little bit unique to just a single face in the front. Because my original design, when I was making the rough prototype, I was thinking like, okay, you could have one face like this, and you could have another face like this. And then the idea occurred to me, but why don't I put the face on the other side? And then it's kind of like a reveal. You turn the thing at the top, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's another face there. And I think somehow that has translated to like you said, to the other toys like Bordante and stuff like that. It wasn't really intentional. I think it just kind of, I think my subconscious just stored this idea there. And then as I'm busy designing Gorodante, I was like, oh yeah, I should put a face in the back of his head, because then you could turn it. And the reason why that also happened was, I think I've got the original here. This is like the old one. This is like the really, I mean, you can see it's still in gray. These markings here with the marker, I don't know if you can clearly see it. That was for when I was going to make the molds, and how I had to split the molds and everything. But because I wanted his head to kind of like be floating above this like crevice of his mouth and stuff, it was like this. And I was thinking to myself, oh, but he's got this huge cavity. I've got to make it interesting. And that's when I decided, like, okay, let me pop another face on the other side. So you've got a bit of that type of thing happening. And then also the other thing that I think is translated to my other toys as well is the extra sort of face in the torso. Is the other thing that I see. it's translating to all my toys now.
No, it's very. Now, I mean, I say one thing also I think quite unique with your toy, or unique from what I've seen, is that you obviously each face or variation of toy is different. They have different color schemes and that.
Yeah.
Is that easy for you to keep track of, or do you just do what you feel? Are you like each design like, actually, I'll just throw these colors in because I want to use it?
So I try to keep track of it, but as I'm busy painting them, it just happens that I'm like, oh, put a bit of this color, and then I look and I'm like, well, it doesn't look like the first batch, because they're starting to change a lot. Or I'm trying to get the same green that I used, and for some other reason, it's my own undoing, because I obviously didn't keep track of what I was mixing.
Yeah.
And I can't get the same green. I can get it sort of close to, but it's not the same. It's like, oh well. And the other thing as well is that because I paint color shift paints on the top of them afterwards, before I varnish them, I put a little bit of color shift, so they got they've got a bit of that color shifting happening. That also tends to change the color tones a little bit. So even if I'm looking at an original or a finished painted one, and I'm trying to match the colors, it's hard, because with that color shift, it's kind of like it's faking where I can't really see what that original color was. Or I have an idea, but it's never the same. But I guess that's the thing of when you're doing little batches at a time, it's really hard to unless it's like flat colors, and you know that you're going to make X amount, you mix up a big batch of paint and you keep that. But I kind of, for me, I kind of like it that they always a little bit off, not the same color scheme, so it makes each one unique, because they're all hand painted, so it's never going to be perfect exactly the same for all of them. But I think that kind of makes it fun as well.
That's definitely cool. I mean, when you say about obviously the work and time that goes into it, I mean, is it, I don't know if you'd want to disclose it, but obviously how much time do you think it takes you to get one of these figures from start to finish, with the painting and the sanding and everything?
That's a good question.
Obviously, it will depend, because I know you've got little figures and big figures and stuff. But I just think, because that's sometimes. So obviously, people who are watching this are new. Obviously, I I watched obviously Slime House and Empire Toys, which I'm sure you probably know who they are. And that's how I came across your figure. And obviously, wouldn't be my sort of thing, but something gravitated towards it. And I think that's a kind of unique thing. But I think when you see a toy figure in comparison to the normal prices from the big manufacturers, and you're like, oh, well, yours is, and I'll use example, it's like 50 plus postage, and maybe Marvel Legends is what, 25, 28 in the UK, I think at the minute. People go, oh my god, that's quite a lot. But obviously I know, and from seeing videos from like Slime House and that, how he makes them, and I assume obviously some of the processes are the same. Like there's a lot of your time and effort, and that's reflected in the price. But I just thought it'd be good if anybody's watching it and a fan to kind of get an idea realistically how much time you actually put into each figure.
Because what I do, so time wise, what I do is I normally do them like in little batches. So what I'll do is I prepare like say 10 of them, and that means 10 face plates, 10 bodies, 10 arms, and then I would paint them all at that same time, even though the face plates, like out of the 10 it would be 3 of one, 3 of another, and so forth. Then what I do is I'll paint them, but I mean, it can easily, just painting the body, setting them up, that's a couple of hours, and then the face plates is easy. I could sit here from like 6 in the afternoon till about 10 at night just painting the one side, and then I've only done the basics, and I still got to do the eyeballs and the teeth. But what I normally do is I do like in little increments. So I would try to do all the base colors first, and then I leave it for that. Then that's done for the evening. Then the next evening I would spend just doing all the eyes, because I found if I try to push through and just do everything at once, you get to a point where you don't enjoy it anymore. You kind of like, because you get into a little bit of a zone, but when you start pushing past that zone, it becomes like almost like factory labor. You just you're one after the other, and you lose that enthusiasm. So what I try to do is I try to just use that time that I'm excited for doing it. And then the minute I start feeling, I'm getting a bit of the burnout, or I'm getting a bit of the point where I'm not enjoying it, then I stop and I go, okay, you know what? Tomorrow I'll carry on, because then I can, use that energy again and put that same enthusiasm back into it. Because for me, it's very important that each one gets the same love and care, that, so that, like, because like you said, they're not cheap. It's not cheap toys. Compared to, like Marvel figures or a DC figure or something like that. So I want to make sure that, whoever purchases it, they got something that, all the care and attention has been put into it. And, that it's like basically a little art piece that you're buying, yes, it's a toy, but it's one level above.
No. And I say, I think that's kind of part of the reason what drew me to it. Not only is it like a stage up, so to speak, but it's that uniqueness that you said that, and like each one is individual. Like you can, if you go to, I think Toy-Con is the one that I normally see you at. I know you go to a lot of other ones, but obviously when you see them all lined up, they are so different in their own little ways. And I say it's only because he kind of looked like a carrot-ish this side. That's the why it drew it to me. But I know that there'll never be probably another one that looks like that. So it's nice, I think.
There'll always be some or other slight color variation or something.
and I think that's nice in this day and age. Like the toy industry is so massive. Like I think it's 1/4 of all toys are adult collectors now, and obviously, like you and me, obviously, if you He-Man, so you're from at least the 80s and stuff, you're around. There's been so many toys and so many different variations and stuff, and and then we had the 4 Horsemen come along and all their stuff. That it's nice to see something unique, let's separate from the crowd. And I think yours are very much on their own, as far as I know. So
and that's the thing, because what I also love about the toy art industry is that every artist has like a sort of a unique take on what they're making, and it's almost like a signature. And I think that's really exciting, because the thing with like the mass produced toys is obviously because of costs and how much it costs to make these massive injection molds and things like that. They have to pump out thousands of these things in order to even make money with it, or that it's viable. Where these things, you're doing very limited runs, you're doing small batches. But what's nice is that I can do like a batch of toys. Let's say they don't sell, then at least I haven't spent thousands of pounds doing it. I've spent obviously time and effort, but it's not like you've made all of these things and suddenly they're not selling and you're just sitting there with hundreds of these toys in your garage or something like that. That's the worst thing. So that's the thing about the art toys, and that is that they're small runs, but they're nice. You do something, you put it out there, people go, yeah, I like this, or nah, it doesn't resonate with people. It's like, oh, fine, not everything's going to resonate with everybody. It just it is what it is. But I still enjoy it. It's good fun.
No, it definitely is. And I mean, probably on that, I don't know. There is another YouTuber called Valverse that obviously do an American toy line. If you follow, so also to add on to what Colin said is that essentially not only when these big companies make these molds for Marvel, which this guy used to work for, disclose that essentially every mold that was made to say if they were going to make the Kingpin, they needed to use that mold 2 or 3 times for 2 variations of that figure. So when you logically think about that, any character can be created, but they have to reuse it, which is why we get so many Captain Americas, so many Iron Men, so many Batman, like DC and stuff, because they just are like, well, we can reuse the mold for this and this. So
it's true. And then you see, like when they bring out, especially I remember in the early 90s, they would bring out these Batman figures, and I can't remember exactly what the toy line was, but I remember it was like Batman, and it was Batman with like scuba gear, and it was Batman with glow in the dark bat wings and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was exactly the same figure. They just added these little attachments onto him.
Yeah, I think that was I think I had the Batman. He used to have like a little clip and then like a cape, and that was it. And then you put it on around his neck and that. Yeah, those are.
Because I remember going into the toy shop and I just seeing like all of them like in a line. I was like, man, it's exactly the same figure, just got all these attachments. So
yeah, crazy. Yeah, no, it is crazy. I mean, it's funny that you say that. I say for Batman, it makes sense. I think a lot of kids, when you see this stuff, and when it's like Superman and he comes with a plane or something, and like, well, who came up with that idea?
Yeah, because especially when you're like a kid, you're like, but he's never had a plane. Like, why the hell does he have a plane? And and same with like Batman. Like, when did Batman go scuba diving? I don't understand. It's crazy.
It is definitely.
But I guess it's like you said. The thing is that they have to maximize the sales of that product, so they just throw everything, including the kitchen sink.
Yeah, no. And I say that's kind of to go towards the point that we were making. Obviously, even though you do such a small run, and there are variations as you go on, and there are certain changes. Because I like the coffin guy, and I was like, I'm not getting any more. And then I saw the franking guy that you've just on release.
Oh,
and
yeah,
damn it. Yeah, I'm like, oh, now I'm tempted like that. So but I mean, it's enough of a variation that makes sense to say. But yeah, when you see the big companies that not only when you see they produce like how many thousands or whatever that they're using the mold again, it just goes to show the scope of how actually small your runs are.
And I mean, like for example, with this Franken guy, I mean, I remade like his arms are brand new, like it's totally a new sculpt. The legs are new sculpt, and I even went as far with the actual body. It's got like because I wanted him to kind of look a little bit disheveled, as the Frankenstein character. I made like some of the little planks, like they stick out. He's got little off camera, sorry.
Yeah,
he's got like little staples and things on there. Just little details that makes it different to the original coffin head bodies. So there is a variation. It's not just like the same body over and over and over.
No.
That's it. Because I don't have the problems of injection molding.
No. No, one thing also that kind of came to mind. I mean, obviously we spoke about it earlier. Obviously, that you use magnets for the hands. Has there ever been any thought that maybe you might have like a creature in the future that might come with like 2 sets of hands, or like you might have more than 2 magnets on it? To say like we'll use a Frankenstein example. Say if it had magnets on the top, then you could change it potentially from one creature to another. Is that a thought that has gone through your head, or are you more happy to keep the figure more unique, so to speak?
So actually, what I'm currently playing around with is it's now just it's early phases. I mean, I've just done some rough sketches and things. I want to make a little sort of play set for the coffin heads that's something I've never done before, and it's not something I've really seen in the toy art scene. I've seen like one or two, but I don't think it's a very big thing. But I always loved playsets. I always thought playsets were like the coolest thing, you know, because you got all the figures or the toys, and then it comes with a playset, and you're like, oh my god! And obviously, Castle Grayskull was the thing for me growing up. You know, that thing was just amazing. And so I was thinking I want to do like a playset for the coffinets, and the idea then is the playset will come with like one or two additional arms that you can then swap out onto the characters. It's something that I've been thinking about as well, because now that you mention it, it is something that crossed my mind. I was like, maybe it should have like somewhere where you've got these one or two extra arms that are like attached to a wall or something. You can pop them off and put onto your coffin and put the other arms back on there, you know, something like that. So I'm still playing with it. It's like I said, it's early days, but that is a plan that I'm entertaining.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm trying to think of what one. So probably then is kind of your process. I know you've mentioned kind of how do you. So when you kind of come up with an idea, because probably if you just join the stream or you're just watching the video, obviously not only do you create the figure, but then you have a little story to it and everything. Is there kind of a process that you go through for each figure? Like, are you like, I mean, like, I don't know if you want to use the backstabber maybe for a idea, like how did that come about? What was your thought process? And is it like well, this is drawn this, it's a good design, I have to create a story for it before I then
yeah, so like with the coffinets, for example, because it was like originally these things were born just from a sketch. When I started producing more and more of them, I realized, you know, I've got to have something that sort of like unifies them, or some sort of a backstory. So I am actually working on a backstory for them. I've got like on the header card, it's got like the rough sort of, you know, it's got a basic backstory, but I will be embellishing some more on that.
Okay.
And the idea is I want to do a comic or something, but it'll be you know, just 2 or 3 or 4 pages, kind of illustrating the story, the idea, you know, what the coffinets are, why they're around, what they do, and then, you know, slowly building this on this universe. And for the backstab ghoul that you mentioned, he was again, I was again. Another sketch, but what happened was it was a bigger drawing. It was actually a design for a poster, and I had this one character that backstab ghoul like lurking in the background, and I was looking, I was like, oh, you know what, he's a kind of a fun character. I think I want to make him into a figure. And so I basically turned him into a figure, and then obviously taking inspiration from the poster that I'm still working on, I then made the story for him that, you know, that he's part of Creepy Frank's, because Creepy Frank's my overall sort of, he's the not the caretaker. Oh, the word just slipped my mind now. He kind of like, you know how the Crypt Keeper, he introduces the stories for Tales of the Crypt. So the Creepy Frank, he runs this place called Late Night Video, and the story behind Late Night Video was it was this obscure video shop that it would just appear out of nowhere. The shop would pop up, and people that actually found this shop would go in there, and there would be all these really strange films that once they seen them, they can't remember they only remember fragments of the films, but they can't like remember the titles or anything like that. And it turns out that Creepy Frank was actually, he was making these films. He was like basically the director, producer, everything. And then he never distributed his films. You could only see his films if you found a Late Night Video, got in there and got to rent these films. And that's like it's got a bit of like a supernatural element to it. And so he's like the curator of everything. So everything that happens in this universe of the Coffin Heads and Backstab Ghoul, they almost probably came from films that he had created. They were, you know, characters or something in a film that was directed by Creepy Frank. So everything falls under the umbrella of Late Night Video, because obviously my love for VHS.
Yeah, oh, no.
You know, I mean, I grew up in the era of VHS and stuff like that. So I just loved it, and you know, and there's been a bit of like a sort of a nostalgia for VHS as of late, and I mean, I've had Creepy Frank for a while, you know, the character, and one day I just thought, you know, but why don't I just combine? Like, I love VHS, I love old films, I love grindhouse stuff, and and I love monsters. So just put everything together, and and that's basically where late night video came from.
Okay, no, that sounds
Yeah.
cool.
So getting back to what you were asking, yeah, they all actually have some sort of story, and I am busy sort of creating a comic book for them that will kind of explain their stories and how they all fit in this universe of Corlenscope.
Okay. No. It's I say, like, I mean, like, from what I gathered before, like, obviously that you sculpt it, you paint it. You obviously, I think from the last event you were at, you did like the ghoul kind of picture for one of your fans and stuff. I think you put that on Instagram. So people, obviously he is on Instagram, and we'll put a post or put something in the links later so you can go towards him if he hasn't already promoted the channel. So I thank him for that. But yeah, it's just, I say, like, how cool your art is and how everything comes together and stuff. It is, yeah, very talented and very different skills in so many areas that work so well, I think.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, it's if you got like I said, the graphic design, illustration, and I think it's drawing on all those little bits of things that that you've done in your in your career and so forth, and using that to advantage, to tell your stories and to create your figures and stuff. Because something I didn't mention, when I was in high school, I was in an art school, and in this art school, so it pretty much functioned like a high school, but except in our daily, like your daily, you do English and geography and history. We always had certain time periods set aside for art. So you would have drawing, say, on a Monday, you would have painting on a Tuesday, sculpture on a Wednesday, and then it would cycle again like that. And then at a certain stage, you could then choose which of those art things you want to sort of focus on. Yeah. So I decided to do sculpture and graphic design. No, sculpture and design. That was what I chose. But within sculpture, you could do either sculpture, or you could do puppetry. And I chose puppetry because I love the idea of marionettes, things that move, and that you could actually make something, attach strings to it, and actually, move it, bring it to life. And so even from my school career, like I was always fascinated with the idea of like making something, because sculpture for me was nice, but it was static. You make a sculpture, cast it in bronze or in cement or in plaster Paris, put it on a mantelpiece, and that's it. It's done. People admire it. But to me, puppets was just like the next level, because it's exactly the same process. You're sculpting things, you're painting it, you're building it. But then the next level is that you actually bring it to life. Whether it be a string marionette or like a normal, one of those cheap rod puppets. Yeah. Either way, it was just that really appealed to me. And I had a friend of mine that was with me in the same course, and he got hold of like Fangoria magazines. I don't know if you're familiar with Fangoria magazines. They like these horror magazines that covers basically everything horror related. And we often used to see these photos of all the creatures that these VFX artists were making in the United States and stuff like that. And we were like, oh my God, it's like puppets, but just on a much bigger scale. So we would, we always were trying to sculpt like monster puppets and things like that, because we wanted to kind of do what those VFX guys are doing, but just, what a high school kid could do, Yeah. And yeah, man, and it was so funny because I remember our sculpting teacher, he enjoyed what we were doing, but he was like, it's always monsters. So one day, for your next assignment, because he thought, okay, now I'm gonna catch you guys. For your next assignment, you have to make a puppet based on the Bible, like some character from the Bible. And we were like, oh, okay. So we grab a Bible, painting to the Bible, we come upon Revelations, and we're like, oh my goodness, this is like gold mine of demons in here. So when we revealed our puppets, he was just like, I think he just face planted, because he was like, oh my God. Because when he saw these monsters, like, what's this? We're like, from the book of Revelations, demons. Yeah. Oh, so as much as he tried to steer us in, from not making monster puppets, we always ended up making monster puppets. I think after that he just gave up. He's like, yeah, okay, just do whatever you guys do.
Well, it obviously works for you, doesn't it? So there we go. got another comment. Curator. I think that's what someone was thinking. Maybe that was.
Oh
the
yeah,
word.
that's Creepy Frank's. Yeah, the curator of late night video.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Got lost for words there.
Yeah, no, it always happens when you're on live stream and you're talking to people and you struggle with words. So don't worry.
Yeah, it's crazy because you know, person's like always like laser focused on the question and stuff, and then you have to answer, and suddenly your brain just goes, "Oh, words, those things don't exist anymore."
Yeah, it does. I mean, but I think it always brings up random things as well. Is always quite good. It's so I say so. People obviously, I don't send anybody the questions when I do these. I just ask them as they go, and obviously, good to see their natural like reactions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I think it's better because I think the thing is, you know, people might get so hung up on those particular questions that if you do ask them something a bit left field, it might just throw them totally off track, and then they'll be like, "Oh no."
Yeah.
It's happened to me before.
Okay, how's it? I was like, my concern is just like you prep so long for one question, and then we'd answer it in 2 minutes, and go on something else, and you're like, "Oh, what do we talk about now?"
Yeah. It's like suddenly there's dead air, and we're like, "Oh my goodness."
Cool. Probably a little bit more. Is there anything working on now you would like to showcase or preview or anything or that for the audience?
Currently, I don't actually have anything physical at the moment, but there is some stuff that I am busy tinkering on. It's still early days, but I'm hoping if all goes according to my plans. Now, don't hold me to this because my plans are like my wife will say, like, when it comes to planning, I'm the worst. but I am planning something for the month of October.
Okay.
It will be Coffin Head related, obviously.
Yeah.
But it will be something special for October. Yeah, it's something I wanted to do last year already, but you know, this is my thing is that I have all these ideas, and then I forget that you only have so much time to do them in. So out of the 10 ideas, if I can manage to do 4 of them, I'd consider that a win, because you know you just run out of time, and you're like, oh man, I want to do this, and this, and this, and it's just no, not going to happen. But like I said, this particular one thing that I want to do, I've been wanting to do it since last year, and I really want to, like, that's my main focus now, is like getting that done for October. I think people are going to really enjoy it. That's what I'm hoping. It might be a situation of like, I've got all these cool things. Everybody's like, cricket. Like, everybody's like, not like this.
Well, no, I'm sure they will. I say from what I've seen, obviously, you know, I assume they sell quite well from all your figures and stuff. So it's cool.
Yeah, no. People, I mean, the collectors and stuff has been amazing. I mean, honestly, it's like, you know, like we mentioned earlier, you know, these aren't cheap things, and it really is a luxury thing. But I mean, for the collectors, you know, people buying stuff and that, it's really awesome. It's so nice, you know, because like you said, you know, people come there, they look at the stuff, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" Or and funny enough, one of the comments I get quite often is people going, "Oh, it reminds me so much of toys from the '80s," and I'm like, "Oh yeah!" I'm like mission a success.
Yeah. No. I mean, it is good. I mean, I say, like, obviously I'm part of the YouTube community, and obviously I'm a small part of that. But the bigger channels, I mean, I only came across your stuff via their channels. So, but there's so many people I follow that keep coming across, like, or go to ToyCon, and one of the main focuses is always what you have to sell and what you've got. So there's obviously something appealing that you're putting out that is people are gravitating to, because obviously I wouldn't see it so often, I think, in people who I think have different tastes. And I mean, even myself, as I say, like, I mean, I don't know how many times you've been to ToyCon, I say, but I think it was last year's video when I saw it. And I say you had several of these, and it was the only thing that kind of appealed to me. And I say, I'm not you know, the knockoffs and all this stuff, I don't really dabble in those. This is kind of the first kind of unique figure that I've gone for. But yeah, it was just saw the video, and it was just like, oh, that's quite a cool design, and then didn't think anything about it, and then saw it this year, and I was like, and then obviously you kept coming up on Instagram, and I was like, well, let's just see. Well,
I must say, like, you know, thanks to Aaron and Theo, Aaron from Toy Empire, and Theo Kane as well. Like, I mean, we actually met Aaron. So what happened with how I got to know Aaron was I applied for Comic Con in London.
Okay.
The first time I've done a Comic Con in London, and we thought we were going to get a table in Artist's Alley, but somehow they put us at the bottom, next to Aaron, which was obviously, he sells the toys and that. So we were like, so it was Aaron's table, our table, and then another toy seller next to us. So we were like wedged in between, But I mean, he was really cool. He was like giving us advice, and he was like looking at the stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, this is really cool stuff." And we were like, "Yeah, we're supposed to be there by the artist alley. We're down here." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it," And so that's how I got to meet him, and he was really nice. Gave us like lots of tips and things, and so forth. And then this year was my second ToyCon. So the first time I did ToyCon, obviously Theo, I've seen Theo's channel before, but when he walked in there, it's like a moment of like you get a little bit starstruck because you're like, oh, that's that guy from YouTube. And then the whole day he was like running around, filming stuff, but he hadn't come to my table or anything. I was like, oh, maybe it doesn't appeal to him or something. And then later that afternoon, when I was busy I was packing something, and as I turned around, he's standing there, and he's like, "Oh, dude, this stuff's amazing!" And I was like, "Oh my god!" and I mean, since then, we've been keeping contact with him via Instagram and stuff like that. And he's done some videos of my stuff, and yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, that's the other thing I want to mention, like the actual community, like yourself as well. The whole community of toy collectors and toy artists and stuff. I've realized it's just amazing. It's really, because back when I was doing the stuff in South Africa, it was quite limited, because there's very few people that do what I do back home. Like there's a lot of good illustrators and stuff like that, but very few people doing actual like art toys and stuff like that. That market is very small. However, we've got a lot of people that love the stuff and they collect it. But once I got to the UK, the amount of people here that's into it was just like next level, and it's been awesome. Chatting to all these guys and getting like advice, and it's been amazing.
No. So yeah, it's a very good comment. I mean, you probably don't have seen much of my stuff, but that's one thing I always try to promote. There is a lot, and I mean, we live in a world where there's a lot of negativity, and I think even in certain collecting circles, there are a lot of people who can bash on stuff and scalpers and everything else. And I say, and it's always good, I think, say with Theo and and Empire Toys and all the other little ones as well, they're always quite positive on what they communicate. And I think that is just great, because it's nice, because sometimes the world is not a nice place. And
and I think what's also nice is that the you guys create a sort of an awareness that, because I remember when I first went to a ToyCon, there was this thing about people weren't happy about resin toys because they kind of saw them as, if it's not so Fubi, it's not an art toy. They had this sort of attitude, and I just thought to myself, okay, I understand, but it's also a little bit, not everybody can do a Sofubi. I mean, I was chatting to a guy once. He was telling me, like, because I was asking him about Sofubi toys. He said to me, "Look, if you don't have £3,000 to gamble on making a Sofubi toy, don't even bother," because he says that's what you're kind of looking at to spend on making a Sofubi is that's the amount of money. And I mean, that's an astronomical amount of money just for, like, you're so almost like a nobody, and then you suddenly going to spend all this money on a toy that either it's going to make it or it's going to break it, And but I mean, since then, I mean, with all these YouTube channels and stuff, and people showing that no, there's this awareness of, like, there's other ways of making art toys. There's resin, there's whatever people use, and it's nice because I think now people are seeing that, but there's a much broader spectrum, and it's nice as well for small toy makers like myself, that I don't have to stress about, if I'm not making Sofubi, people aren't going to be interested. It's like people are like, it's resin, they love it, it's just the medium that you're using. It doesn't matter, it's about the end product. I think that's what's important.
No, definitely, I definitely agree with that.
I mean, obviously, I would love to do a Sofubi one day, or something like that, but until that day comes, it's going to be resin. That's what I know.
I mean, Theo's done some, hasn't he? So he did his own ones with the help of that guy, and that just that whole process alone. I mean, you put obviously the value on it, but yeah, when looking at what he was doing, I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to do. But I was like, yeah, there's no way.
It's crazy because I was chatting to him as well. He said, yeah, it took him a while to dial in those settings and things. And I mean, even with, because I mean, I've been experimenting now with new types of resins that's more like plastic, so it's getting closer and closer to like injection molded figures.
Okay.
But to dial in those print settings and things and to get it right, oh, I was struggling so much. It really isn't just, this idea of like, oh, you just put the resin in, press print, and off it goes. It's like, no. I wish it was like that.
No. I mean, I think I know we're talking about a lot about I mean, Theo is. I think that's the transparency I always like from other YouTubers. But him, it's just he goes into so much detail of what it takes, and you see so many mistakes that he makes. Not that it's a kind of comedy fun. It's just the fact that people get more of a realistic view of what actually goes into these. It's not simple of I'll just draw this, stick it on a cap design. It prints out, job done. It's like so many things can go wrong if it's not balanced. As you say, air bubbles, and then it's like imperfections where the seams are and stuff. And it's just, and then you look at it and you think, no, it's something like this. You just put a few bits together, some paint, and it's like, no, it's nowhere near.
I mean, the amount of times that I've actually was busy painting a figure and I would drop it onto the concrete floor and it would just break, or I would do something stupid, or I do a paint job and I totally mess it up, and oh god, sit there with the thinners trying to clean it off, to repaint it again. So yeah, it obviously, we don't film these things, we don't show people like, oh, look at all these blunders, because I promise you that'll be like a 5-hour long reel.
No, I say so. I have a bit of a dialogue. So obviously, when I got or a bit of a backstory also. So obviously, when I got this figure, so he will live. Probably can't quite let me move my screen a little bit. So there's a little gap there. So he actually sits here, and the reason why I put him here is because I got him, and obviously, if you grew up with toys of the 80s and you see like Playmates, they can't stand for nothing. They're really bad. And I got his, went, oh, he stands really, really well. I put the arms on. I shot that video. Within 5 minutes, I knocked the figure over, and I'm like, so. I've done a bit of so he's got blue tack up on that shelf and he sits there just because I'm so worried about knocking him over. But yeah, it's, as you say, like it's so easy to do stuff now. I was like, and that's not me disrespecting your design. He actually has a great center of gravity and stuff like this. But yeah, I was just like, oh, I was like, I'll put him in the toy room. And if you see my toy room, there's so many different cabinets and stuff falls over all the time. And literally, turn off the camera, tidied something up, moved my arm and knocked him over, and I went, please don't tell me I've just broken him. Fine. Or I don't know if it's a he, but yeah, and I was just like, oh my god.
Do you remember the McFarlane toys, like the Spawn toys and stuff?
Yeah, the 90s version when we started off. Yeah.
So those things, I mean, as detailed as they were horrendous for standing. I remember I had a bunch of them, and none of them would stand. They would always just, like, over time, they would just fall over, and I could never get the damn things to stand. I don't know what it was with us, because I had a which one did I had? I had a Violator, which is like but he was like more like a beast creature. Yeah, and then I think the one socket was kind of lazy, because you'd slowly like, I get home and he's like this. What the hell is it? And then I had this. It was a sort of like a soldier, but he was like a zombie. And he as well, super cool pose, super cool detail, but the thing was just like never get it. So when I'm designing these getting back to the coffin internet, that's something I've been really focusing on, is getting the things to be able to stand on their own. It's been a challenge, to be honest. I mean, they've gone through a few iterations where I've had to, like, okay, do I tilt a little bit 5 degrees? Does it, and the thing is, it sounds like I know what I'm doing, in the sense of like, oh, but you figured it out. It stands by itself. But honestly, I think sometimes it's just dumb luck, because I'm like, okay, the body's kind of standing now. If I add the head, is it gonna add too much weight to the one side? Is it gonna make it topple over? What's gonna happen? So yeah, it's a challenge.
No, I mean, you've done amazingly, because I mean, probably for people at home who you don't see, I mean, even the new figures, like yeah, they stand better than what we got in the 90s and 80s and stuff like this. But there are still a lot of figures that you move their arm or you move their post slightly and they fall over. Obviously, we're not going to try to get. So with this guy, like he has two hands. It doesn't matter what position I put his hands in, he stays up unless I knock him over, obviously. And I think that is, as you say, it might be dumb luck, but I think that's something that's even better because, yeah, I have so many figures that are like, you pose them and it's brilliant. And I'm like, actually, I want to move his hand, and you move his hand just a little bit, and then as you say, like, oh,
yeah, they just don't want to. It's like, what the hell? No, it's crazy. I just wish, like, especially the McFarlane stuff, I just wish they had kind of figured that out. But I think it was because obviously the way that they were sculpting those figures, they were sculpting them almost like maquettes, you know. So and I mean, if you're familiar with the maquette, it's always got some sort of a wire armature that's holding it in place. And I think what they were doing is they were sculpting it like that. And then once they've taken it off the base and removed the support and it's made the molds, then suddenly. And the other thing as well is that, you know, when you're sculpting in clay, it's a certain weight. So maybe they were taking it off the thing, they were putting it down, they're like, oh, look, it stands perfect. But plastic weighs much less than what say sculpting clay would weigh or sculpting wax would weigh. Because I've actually discovered that as well. When I was sculpting my stuff, I would weigh the parts and I'd be, okay, that's how much resin I need. I pour the resin in and suddenly I realize I'm 10 mils short. I'm like, but how's that possible? And it's because actually these things have different weights and you don't take it into consideration. And especially with plastic, it's so much lighter than, you know, these other materials. And yeah, the thing could be that once they've made it, they pop it down and suddenly it can't carry that weight anymore and just falls over. So, like my poster.
Yeah. That was good timing, that was.
Yeah, no, I planned that all along.
So probably another question to say, I mean, as you say, you've explained the story of how you ventured into, like, obviously digital art to this. Have you got kind of any future goals? Is there, you know, do you maybe want to open like your own little studio one day, or is it you just want to expand on this world and that, you know, and that's it for you? Or
I think currently I'm just going to be expanding the world at this point, and then I suppose from there I could always, you know, once I've got this arsenal of things or figures, I suppose then, I mean, anything's possible really. But I think currently it will just be expanding this universe, and obviously there's a couple of characters that I have to like, for example, the Void Explorer. He's got other characters that go with him as well. So I need to first, you know, complete. And my wife must be loving this because she's like, I told you need to finish the things.
Yeah, no.
Like, finish what you start. Like, because I would start a character, get really excited, finish it, but I tell her, oh, but there's these and these characters. It's like, when you're making those, no, I first want to make this other thing, you know. And that's the problem. You're like, you know, we and I think all creators suffer from this. You know, we jump from one thing to another because, you know, it's a new thing that I've got to do. So yeah, so like I said, for now, I'd like to first finish this universe, get all my things together, and then take it from there, I guess. And I mean, yeah, we never know what could happen, like where it could go. It's exciting.
No, definitely is exciting.
Yeah.
I've got a few more questions, so I
don't
want to take a cool. So obviously, as you mentioned, like He-Man, I mean, do you collect any toy lines yourself outside of obviously what you do? Is there anything you collect, or you just have a few fun ones that you pick up, or is it just not your thing?
So I've got a bit of a mixed bag collection. Like I mentioned, I still have that bloody McFarlane toys. They're now in a plastic container because they don't want to stand up straight. They've been punished. But I've got a couple of these. What are they called now? It's a Mazinger Z, Guy King Grandizer. They like these big Japanese vinyl robots from the 70s. So as a kid, I remember we used to have this video store close to where I stayed, and they had this series of tapes called Force 5, which was brought out by Harmony Gold. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
That's
that's it. Yeah. So as a kid, I always used to rent those videos because I absolutely loved the whole like giant robot thing. And so when I found these on eBay, these, but they obviously they're not the original old ones. I think they remade remade them because they were much cheaper. Because I think if you buy the originals, they're like crazy expensive. So these weren't that expensive. They weren't cheap, but they weren't like crazy money. And so I've got a couple of those, and then I've got a couple of random things, like just random toys, and then I've got something that I've had. I'll show you. So another show that I grew up as a kid was Robotech. I don't know if you're familiar with Robotech, which is known as Macross in Japan. Yes. So I got this from a buddy. He's had it since he was 13, and then one day he was like, "Oh, you like toys and that? I've got this. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Oh, hell's yeah!" And I've had it for years, and it's still like in this box.
that is.
I just kept it in the box, but yeah, I mean, because I remember as a kid growing up watching Robotech, we had a couple of the toys, but mainly they just brought the action figures into South Africa. They never really brought the actual like Veritech fighters and all the other battle pods and stuff. Those never came. And I remember a buddy of mine one day at school, his auntie was living in the UK, and she actually had sent him like a battle pod, one of the big, oh man, as a kid, mind blowing. I was like, where did you get this? It's like, oh no, my auntie sent me from the UK. I'm like, can't she send me one as well? Yeah. so fast forward a few years later, when that buddy of mine sent me, oh, I've got this robot from Robotech. Do you want it? I was like, yes, please. So I've got a bit of like a scatter shot of toys and things that I collect, and mainly it's just things that I like. If it resonates with me, I'll be like, yeah, I'll take that. Like the other day, I picked up at a toy show, I picked up this little Mumra for like $5, and I was just thinking like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna actually repaint him because I thought it'd be kind of fun to just do like a crazy Corlenscope paint job on him. I've still got to test it whether the paint will stick, but I'm sure it will. Give it a good rub down with acetone, should be able to make it stick. And I mean, yeah, £5. I mean, it's not so bad. And it's a mummy creature. It's like, what's not to like?
No, definitely. That's cool.
My brothers, they used to have monsters in my pocket. They had some of those toys. But at that stage, I wasn't really. I didn't have much toys anymore because I was obviously I'm the eldest of the three. So at that stage, I wasn't really collecting. And then, funny enough, fast forward a few more years, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I had all these toys. Now I want them all back again. So now I find myself like buying, a random figure here, a random figure there, going on eBay, seeing something. So the collection is not really. Oh, there we go. So my wife actually brought in one of those. So
tell her thank you. Yeah, that's cool looking here.
Yeah, I love it. It's like I said, as a kid, I used to watch the VHS tapes like constantly. Like whenever we used to go to the VHS store, my mom was like, "What do you want to rent?" And I'll be like, "I want to watch those giant robot films again."
No, that's definitely cool. I probably are a bit of a history question going back. Obviously, so speaking, I didn't realize you were from South Africa. So what was the transition from South Africa, obviously, to the UK? Was it more family or was it like work? Did it take you there? Just curious of how you kind of, your story, so to speak, has progressed.
Yeah. So basically, I came to the UK. The first time I came to the UK was in 2006. What happened was, so I was working for a small game studio in Johannesburg called I Imagine Interactive, and we were working on a project. And at that point, I was like, oh, it's taking so long for this project to materialize. I want to try, because back then the whole thing was the more titles you kind of had worked on, the better chance you have sort of like climbing the ladder in the games industry, because it's almost like showing like, oh, I've got experience in this game, and this game. So anyway, so I was after that whole thing of like, I want to get more titles under my belt. And I applied for a studio position in London called DigiGuys, and I got the job. And then that's when I decided to come to the UK. So I spent a year working for them in London. and unfortunately, the project I was working on got canned. And then I applied for a job at Midway Games in Newcastle, and they were doing a game with Vin Diesel called The Wheelman.
Oh, yeah, the driving one. Yeah.
The driving action game. Yeah. Actually, you know what's funny? I mean, we used to rag that the project all the time. You know, Vin Diesel. You know, but it's actually a really fun game to play. It was really a fun game, even though Vin Diesel. But yeah, so I went to work for Midway Games. I worked for them, and then we were hit with that economic collapse that happened in 2000. I think it was when was it? About 2011, I think it was. I can't remember the date. I might be totally off the dates. Yeah. So what happened was my art director that was art directing the Vin Diesel project, because we had just finished that project, and then when the collapse happened, because our investors were predominantly from America, they obviously were trying to reclaim their money and stuff, and so they unfortunately had to close our studio down. But my art director came to me and said, it was myself, another concept artist, a designer, and it was three of us. Yeah, so it was two concept artists and one designer. He came to us and said, "Listen, what are you guys going to do?" And I said to him at that stage, I said to him, "Oh well, basically going to put together a portfolio and try and find a job. See what other studios are hiring." So then he said to me, "Well, I have an idea. I want to actually start my own studio, but we don't want to do game development. What we want to do is we want to do just the concept design work for game studios. So basically like a service line, right?"
Yeah.
And so I said to him, "Okay, well, we've got nothing to lose. We just basically lost our job. So we said, okay, yeah, well, let's do this." And we started Atomorph Design, and we've been going strong now for 15 years. But during that time, so I was working for I started Atomorph Design with Ron Ashtiani and the other guys. Yeah. And then on the fourth year, I said to him, "Look, I wanna go back home." Because my original plan was only to work in the UK for about 6 years, get experience, get all the titles under my name, and then decide to do something, then decide to do what I want to do. And basically, after the 6 years, I said to him, "Listen, my plan was always to kind of go back home, but I'd love to still keep working for the studio, and I just on like a freelance capability or something." So he said, "No, it's fine. You can just work as a subcontractor." And I've been working for the studio. Then I worked for the studio for 10 years remotely. And then, but I used to, every year, they used to invite me to come back to the studio to, do a little bit of training with the new guys that we hire, because I was one of the original founders, do a little bit of training, meet the new people, put a name to the face type of thing. And, just to catch up. And so that was quite nice. So every year I had like a little UK trip coming up, which is a lot of fun. And the first thing I would do when I land in Newcastle is I'd straight off to Forbidden Planet to go look at the comic books and to go look at the stories, because I had to cover all those bases. And then on my last trip to the UK, I was chatting to the arts, the studio head, and because at that because we sold Atomorph to Sumo Digital about. It would be about 3-4 years now, more or less. We sold it to Sumo Digital, but I still kept working for the studio because they were kind of like they're just taking us over. But because of the way that we structured, they were like just business as usual. You're just under new management. That's it. And then I was chatting to the studio head, and they had this idea that they're basically going to be expanding the studio and stuff, and they need people with obviously I had the longest experience, but they need people to kind of like run teams and that. And he said to me, if you're ever interested, that position is there for you, but the only catch of that would be you'd have to be in the UK to do it, because obviously you're directly in contact with the teams. And funny, his timing was kind of right, because at that stage I was kind of thinking of like coming back to the UK, and so then I said to him, well, that's perfect. That will be actually like a really good opportunity. And so so now I'm back here in the UK. It's my second year being back, and what's nice is being back here. But when coming back here, I was thinking but I want to really now push my art toys and poster design and stuff as well. And the other nice thing about the UK is because you guys have so many conventions and things happening, the scene is much bigger. In South Africa, we only had Comic-Con once a year, which it's really great because that month of September when we do have Comic-Con, it's absolutely bananas. I mean, the amount of people that we have attending it is crazy. So everybody looks forward to this huge Comic-Con that's going to happen. But yeah, at least we've got a few things happening, and obviously I tried first the Comic-Cons, but I found that Toy-Con and Designer-Con is actually where my strengths lie, and that's the one I'm focusing on now. And yeah, so that's pretty much up to date. That's where I am at the moment. Is I'm back at Adam Walk in the studio. I've never left him, but in the studio physically, and yeah, back in the UK.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll say we'll probably just almost leave it there if that's all right. I said, do you want to promote like what next event you're at, or if there's anything you want to say or anything to the people watching, maybe inspiring artists that are maybe like you or a younger you, maybe words of wisdom?
Yeah. For the artists out there, like, just keep doing it. It's not an easy road. I'm not going to sugarcoat it in the sense of, figuring, like when you're making your own artwork and stuff, figuring these things out. It's a lot of trial and error, but, always think of it as like even if something fails, you've learned something that you then take forward to the next step. So never see it as a defeat. Always see it as a learning experience, and never give up on what you want to do, even if it takes you, whether it takes you 10 weeks, 10 years, whatever. It's never a fast thing. It's a slow paced burn, but it's worth it. I mean, the fact that I'm 50 years old now, but I mean, it's taken me not that I started when I was a kid, but at a younger age when I started making toys and that. I mean, it's only now that I've really started to get to a point where I'm actually making these things. So it's been a long process, but like with all these things, stuff takes time. And I know, often I chat to younger artists, they get a little bit despondent because they want that sort of like instant, but it must happen now. And it's like, and the thing that you try to remind them is that no, things don't happen now. It takes a while. It's the same with like, some of the games we work on. We will start the project and then we ask the client, like, when do you plan to release? And they're like, oh, in about 5 years. And you're like, okay. And it sounds really long, but once you get into the process of the project, that 5 years goes by like this. It's so fast. And yeah, and basically, yeah. So what I would say to artists that want to do this, like, go for it. I mean, if you've got nothing to lose, just go for it. I mean, it's awesome. It's like, make whatever you want.
It's cool. Yeah. Great words. I say, Arlen, I'll try and throw this up. So obviously, if I can get it right in there. So if you are watching, obviously that's some details. Obviously, you are working on a website currently, and obviously you have the Instagram. So and obviously you are at Toy-Con. And stuff. So thank everybody for watching. So you can hold on. We'll have a little chat after this ends. But yeah, thank you all for attending. It's only a short one, but it's obviously I just always like to leave the audience wanting more. Yeah, thank you for watching. Obviously, and if you can, please do go over to Corlenscope's Instagram, or even reach out to me if there's something you want. I'm sure he'll happily help you out with purchasing some of his great figures.
Thank you very much for having me, Chris. It was amazing.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Bye.